Okay, right. We might as well start this. Let's go. Let's do it. This is a really good turnout, actually, which is really nice. Okay, right. Hi. Welcome to the DigitalOcean Amsterdam July edition. Thank you for coming, even though it's like an oven outside. It's less of an oven in here, which is quite nice. And if you perch yourself next to a fan, it's even better. Those are the prime seats. My name is David. I'm the guy who organizes all of this. I'm the guy who sends all the emails. Yes, this is the Your Majesty office, and we'll just run through a few things before we get started, and then we're ready to go. For those of you who haven't come to a DigitalOcean Amsterdam meetup before, we run these once a month, even including during the summer, and usually they're on dev talks. We tend to do really interesting stuff. This meetup is like an extension of me, so I'm a developer, so we do dev things, but we also do like UX things because they're fun too. And we've had like how the internet works. Like it's kind of broad. DigitalOcean is a broad platform, so I can have a broad range of talks, which is really nice. So we do these once a month, and what's really nice is there's people that come back every time, and they know who they are, and that's appreciated too. Tonight's agenda is pretty chilled. Nadia is going to do her talk after this little introduction, and then after that we'll have pizza, and there's loads of beers, and it's been chilled for at least like 2 weeks, so it should be cold, I'm hoping. We have a code of conduct just to give everyone an idea of like how they should behave. And if anything happens, what you can do. So DigitalOcean is dedicated to providing a harassment-free event experience for everyone, regardless of gender identity and expression, age, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, religion, or that thereof, or technological choices. So in short, if you're just like nice to everybody and they're nice to you, everyone has a good time, and that's great. There is a longer version. It's on the meetup page. You can read it for bedtime reading if you really fancy, but that's the general gist. In emergencies, so up till now we haven't had any emergencies, touch wood, and but if there are, if there's a fire, there's an emergency exit behind you, and you turn left and you go downstairs, or you go through the stairs you came back in, and you like sit on the bridge. We've got beers, so you can just sit and chill, and we will put out any fires. If you fall over and hurt yourself, we have bandages. Hugo is a qualified bandage upper, and yes, he can sort you out, to give you a paracetamol and strap you up. So that's all good. So hopefully we won't need that, and it should be good. Tonight is made possible from our sponsors. So this is the Your Majesty office. They gave me the time to be able to put this together. Obviously DigitalOcean, they paid for all of the snacks and the pizza coming later. Picnic, they paid for all the beers, which is great, and all the soft drinks. And O'Reilly, they gave us some free swag, and we love free swag, so that's good. In case you don't know who DigitalOcean are a hosting provider. Essentially, they do servers and cables, and like servers and cables are quite hard, but they put a nice user interface in front of it, and if you're tech savvy, you can use like an API. If you're not, you can use the user interface, and that's really nice. In short, you don't have to play with servers, because servers are hard. so yeah, if they abstract that away, this is the Your Majesty office, as I said. This is the Your Majesty crew, plus or minus a few girlfriends and boyfriends, husbands and wives. Last week at our midsummer celebration, so that was super nice. We are a creative agency. This is Universal Love Songs for MGM Grand, there it is, in Las Vegas. This was a website where they remade classic love songs for the LGBT community. Yes, and it looks super nice, and Hugo stressed a lot on all the waggling of all the pretty colors, so you should appreciate those. What else do we do? We also do like skiing brands. This is Rockefeller. Made a website. It works on mobile. This is their promotional reel. It was quite nice. And then we also do like eye track. This is a machine learning way to tell what people are looking at in your photos. So if you have a storefront, you take a photo of it and you say, oh look, they're looking at the model. That's what iTrack does. It's super cool, brand new. It's like an internal startup of ours. Yeah, and then O'Reilly, as I say, they make books. You may have read a few of them. These guys are super great to us. They give us like tattoos over there, so if you're feeling super street, you can apply one of those to your arms, and they do come off, so that is a bonus. They give us books, and yeah, they give us a little pack we will raffle off after Nadia's talk, I guess, just before the pizzas. They also give us discount code if you want to go to Velocity, which is a huge conference in London for web performance. And they are doing an artificial intelligence conference in October, and they actually give us a free ticket, which we're going to give away next month at the AI meetup. So that's really cool. And then last but not least, Picnic. They paid for the beers. Super grateful for these guys. If you don't know who they are like an online-only supermarket. Similar to Albert Heijn, but without any shops. They use some really cool technologies like machine learning and AI, and they're just a really, really cool company. Yeah, we've had them talk a few times here, and they're great guys. So they bought all the beers, so that's lovely. Yeah, the calendar for the next couple of months. Next month, on August the 23rd, is going to be machine learning and AI. We're going to get another speaker. But yeah, it's going to be AI used for flood modeling, so that sounds really interesting. September is to be announced. I have a few ideas of what I'm going to put in there, but we haven't quite got it covered yet. We're going to do one super early in October, which is unusual, for the Frontiers Conference pre-party, which is going to be on Tuesday, because they have stuff going on the rest of the week. And I've managed to steal some of their speakers, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then we've got an ADE special, which we did last year just for like a laugh. We're doing it again this year. It's technology in music and creative. Yeah, I've got Pete doing the Internet of Drums, and again, I need to find another speaker for that. But that's what's coming up, so that's pretty exciting. Tonight has been made possible by several people. I run around crazily, but I need these guys to help me out to, yeah, because otherwise I can't do it on my own. Hugo is our chief bandage upperer. He's also Mr. Technical. So yeah, and he's doing all the live stream and stuff, so I'm super grateful for that. You might have seen, hopefully you saw Valerie at the front door. She gave her a sticker and signed you off. And Erica was, she actually does do UX, and she's part of your UX crew. Yes, so that's really great, and she was yeah, making sure that everything worked out well with the signing up. So that's good. Yeah, if you guys have any feedback, you can find me on Twitter. David Interview 1. The other David Interview was already taken, which is super annoying, but I'll take the one. And then yeah, Samantha, she runs the meetups internationally. If you want to send feedback, like say nice things, or if something happens, you can report it to her, and she will sort it out. Her email is samantha@digitalocean.com. And if you want to tweet or Instagram, or I don't know, what do the kids use these days? I don't know, like the social medias, you can use DO Meetup, and then I can find it and like it, and that's great. We've got a Slack channel which not many people are using. It's kind of like an echo chamber. I like talk, and like occasionally there's a response. I'm not quite sure if we're going to keep it going. We need to figure out a better way of doing it. But there is a link there, and you can get on it and talk back to me. That'd be really nice. Does anybody have any questions?
Try Telegram.
Telegram, yeah, exactly, and it's encrypted and everything. That's super nice. Yeah, okay, well, that's me done. That's my introduction. Yes, next up we have Nadia, and she's going to tell us how not to kill designers and UX people.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Good. Just testing it out. Right. Okay. We should be all set. So, welcome everybody. It's really nice to see that so many people actually came by. I was thinking that in this weather, everybody just prefers to stay somewhere close to the cooling devices and fridges, but it's really nice to see everybody. I promise I try to make it that you won't regret that you came to my talk. So I'll try to make it really interesting for everybody. In order to make that, I need to understand what kind of audience I have today. So is there any user experience designers or visual designers, just designer base in the room? Raise your hands. All right, a few people. Cool. Any developers in the room? Wow. Okay, awesome. Any management type of people, product management managers? All right. Anybody else that I didn't? Marketing. All right. Huh. What's that there at the back? Marketing as well. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that's for sure the way most technical audience that I ever had. So I will have to keep my user in my head, right? But I'm going to try to make that interesting, of course. So today we're going to talk about not how to kill designers or developers, but how to build the killer features together, but not to kill each other. Why did I pick this topic? I think that's kind of a popular thing nowadays when every company wants to have a user experience designer or a designer on board. Of course, when the business has something to do with the digital products, there is a lot of development involved, etc. Usually the communication doesn't really go very well. So let's talk today about that and see what we can do to make it better. Before we're going to start and move into the presentation itself, I would like to tell a little bit of this story. So I would like to use, like everybody in the room, to use their imagination and forget about the software, right? Let's imagine that we have a project and we're all building a house. So just like every time in an office we would have, like a Scrum team, which I suggest I call a building team for now, like a team of builders. And we'll have our designers, that would be like interior designers or something, and we have the product owner, who is the house owner. Let's imagine that for a second. So this is our project. This is what we're going to build, right? We have a we have a pretty house. It has like 2 floors. It has like some vases. It has wide windows. And my product owner, my house owner, told me that, hey, I want to have this like some wide windows because I like flowers. I want them to get a lot of light in. Yeah, I would like it that way. I would like to have 2 floors. I would like to have this little thing on the roof. This is how I want it. Similar to what we do every day, right? So we have requirements. There we go. So everything goes well. The work is started. Our sprint set up. Priority is clear. Requirements are there. Everything's documented. The work is started. But sometimes things go wrong. Let's imagine in our case we have like bad weather is coming up, right? And the team has to start working and to like find out some ways to fix the bugs, to fix some requirements are missing, some use cases were not tested, etc. They get out of the situation, and here we go. Delivery time. So we have our company sitting down looking at the demo in these meeting rooms, like it's usually at the software companies. We're presenting our burn down chart, which looks quite good, right? Like, so we committed to 30 points, we got down, everything looks great, all the requirements are committed and delivered. But if we look at the end result, it actually kind of like something's not right. Looks familiar? Happen to your software sometimes?
Always.
Yeah? Good. This is what we're going to talk today about. So clearly some windows are missing, and like you cannot just come to your house requester, to your house owner and say, hey, we just removed a couple of windows, we painted your roof orange just because, well, the other paint was cheaper and we actually didn't have time to build 3 windows, so we thought 2 is still good, right? So we kind of like we just made some decisions over there. So what I'm going to be talking today about is the communication as a key, and the statement that I would like to make is that the communicative teams are always getting greater results at the end. So let's talk about how to correct the situations. And so who I am today to talk about this. So my name is Nadia Udalova. Nadia Udalova. I've seen a lot of Ukrainians and Russians and people, so good to see those for sure. I'm the user experience team lead at XebiaLabs. Maybe some of you know Xebia, because I always have this confusion. So Xebia is our partner company, but I work for XebiaLabs, and we do enterprise DevOps software. So we have 3 in-house products that do continuous delivery. I joined XebiaLabs in 2014 as a UX designer, so I made quite a path in 4 years right now, in 4.5. I'm leading the UX team and actually arranged the UX team at XebiaLabs since 2017. I really appreciate your work, guys, that you are doing with DigitalOcean, because I'm also a co-founder of Ladies at UX Amsterdam meetup. So this is a user experience focus and female in tech focused meetup. Come by, you find us on the meetup as well. There is a lot of great talks every month, a lot of different events. And I'm also pretty agile, pretty lean oriented, and I was certified for the design sprinting from the Google Ventures. So that's something that I'm always trying to use in my work as well. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that today as well. All right. A little bit of the history. So when I came and joined XebiaLabs in 2014, as I said, so we are a company that does deployment software, release orchestration software. Sounds pretty techy, but probably you guys know what I'm talking about. This is approximately what I've seen. It was like a lot of development teams, a lot of screens everywhere. You know, the light was a bit down. You know, like everybody was so focused on writing code, and there was no really user experience point over there. So because our software is done for basically developers, so it's like developers are doing the software for developers. So what I often would hear, hey, I know our user perfectly. We are the target users ourselves. We are the target audience. So we don't need much designers. We don't need much user testing. We don't need much user experience involvement. Yeah. Sorry. So that's what I was confronted when I came to XebiaLabs in the beginning. This is approximately how I felt. There was like a big office, and I was like alone standing there in the middle. That's me, in case you didn't notice. And I was like, all right, what do I do now? Where do I start? How do I turn this big development-driven, development-oriented company and make people look a little bit better for better user experience, maybe incorporate this user centricity into the organization. And today I would like to talk a little bit about this path that I made and the couple of the things that I learned, maybe for some organizations that are in similar situations to consider. And my talk is going to be based a little bit on the management of the user experience, a little bit on the collaboration, a little bit on the communication. Feel free to raise the hands if there is any questions. I would like this to have a little bit as a discussion, so I don't like to talk too much. All right. So when I joined XebiaLabs, I kind of so as I said, I was sometime when I was working as a user experience designer. I was like one for 20, 25 developers. It was working fairly well, and then we started growing. And I quickly understood that, hey, there was a need for user experience team. I need some help to make sure that there is this user experience point in this whole development-driven organization. So what I learned that there are two main challenges, two main things that you have to pay attention if you would like to make this change towards user experience being well collaborated with development department and building some cool stuff, right? Because usually how I've seen it before that development kind of like sits in one side, the UXers sit in the other side, and Sometimes, at least at my company previously, it was that I wasn't even always sure what guys are doing. So kind of like they've been developing their code, we've been like doing some research, maybe working, designing the future features, but we haven't been actually like talking to each other much. And yeah, sometimes it's ridiculous, but I know that that's true, that sometimes even the names are barely known. So this is exactly this case that I would like to talk about this. Any similar situations like that? How collaborative are the teams? Do you recognize what I'm saying right now? Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's start with the allocation of the UX resources, right? Because this is kind of like the starting point, I think, of how to set up this proper communication, proper collaboration within the organization between the UX and the development. So there are two general ways how to integrate user experience into like Agile, Scrum. How many people work in the Scrum teams, by the way, in Agile? All right. Anybody who doesn't know what Scrum is? Okay. So I was, because we at XebiaLabs, we heavily use Scrum teams. We have like around 7 teams right now who are running Scrum, and I was looking for ways, hey, how do we set properly this a collaboration so we are on the same page? So 2 ways to integrate UX into Agile. Let's look into these things. All right. So the first one is kind of, well, maybe looks familiar to some of you if you're gonna look on the screen. In the UX world, it's called internal agency. So UX in the organization is behaving like an internal creative agency, internal design agency. It looks something like that. So there is like a UX team that sits somewhere. There are a couple of people there. So in my case, it was 3. And there is like a UX lead or UX manager or team lead, somebody who is kind of like gives the direction to the team, kind of like helps to split the work. And there are of course development teams around that who has developers, front end, back end, maybe mixed, maybe separate, and they have PO. And in my case, for example, it was a couple of development teams for our internal UX agency team. How it works in practice, that usually PO would come to the lead, they would give them the requests, the lead would put these UX-related tasks on the backlog, and then the UX team would design something, and then they would give it back to the developers, so that's going to be developed. There are a couple of minuses and a couple of pluses of this approach. So starting with the pluses, what I actually like about this kind of UX involvement into the development organization is that you actually have your UX team as a team sitting down together, so they probably have their own design rituals, their user experience team rituals, so they are actually behaving as a one team. Another plus is that they probably are more focused on the future of the product, so they have a little bit more time. Let's say, hey, let's figure out what our next feature will look like, and they're maybe collaborating between each other. They're kind of like, hey, what do you think? Or it's like let's brainstorm a little bit together. So they're working maybe separately, but at the same time together on the feature. So they do really behave like a team. And another plus is, yeah.
So yeah, you have 4 teams there. So like you were just saying, then, so they're not designed to compete. They work together, but do they have like a quarter of the assignment? Do they have they have their own special quarter of the assignment to do when it all fits together, or how is the work provided?
Yeah, usually
maybe you'll get into that.
Usually there is like a UX backlog. Like every of these development teams have their own backlog, and usually the UX backlog is kind of a mix, a combination of the whole of the of each of these features, for example, of each of these development teams. Whoever needs how much work, right? It all goes into like one backlog for the UXers, and then the lead assigns, hey, he picks one person, you work on this, you work on that.
I'm sorry, so one backlog for all 4, not 4 backlogs.
So one backlog for this, like for the user experience tasks, and each backlog for the development tasks for each of the teams, because
each of them.
Those are usually like they have their PO and they have their own development world.
Yeah.
This is how it usually happening. But there are a couple of minuses for this approach, right, as well. Usually, the UX lead or the team itself really struggles with the feature prioritization because you know, it kind of like at the end comes down to which of the POs screams louder, or you know, like which one pushes harder. Some people here would just say, hey, I'm not gonna even like approach them, they're too busy anyway. So there is like a little bit of a struggle of prioritization. Hey, how do you share this common UX backlog between all of these four teams? And another problem is that there is no really strong connection to the developers because, well, developers running their own rituals, they're like within their own work. As I said, they can be working on something and the UX team could be working on something else. So there is not always this connection there. Another type of the UX allocation in the companies, in the organization, is the cross-functional model. Maybe this is going to be also familiar to some of us. So it's more like a vertically sliced organization, but also there is like a horizontal layer of UX. So each of the feature teams are you know, living within their own world, but there is also a UX incorporated into each of the feature teams. So for example, they would be, maybe they're sitting with the developers and with the POs, so they're being inserted into the development team. And there is this lead who helps them to do this cross-functional alignment. Maybe they still have some design rituals, so maybe they still have their own like stand-ups, so they also keep the consistency between all of the features and they kind of like keep this alignment between each other. Of course, this approach also has a couple of pluses and minuses. So if starting from the pluses first, why I like this way of UX allocation is that because usually UX is super reactive then. You have UX on your team as a development. If there is any bug, if there is any requirements that was missed, if there is an interaction that wasn't designed, usually user experience designer or visual designer or interaction designer on that team will be quite fast and eager to, hey, like, let me just solve this really quickly for you. Instead of, in the other way, it would go to the UX lead first, it would have to be put on the backlog, prioritized, etc., etc. Another plus of this is that UX is actually involved into the development day to day, right? Because they sit together, they hear the same stuff, they work with the same product owner, they, yeah, maybe they're even like pairing up sometimes to build some interaction or some other work. So it goes pretty easy there. And they have the same focus. They're working on the same priorities, they're working on the same features, so it's kind of like easy to stay aligned there. The minuses, there is no UX team as such, so usually the UX culture suffers a little bit. So hey, like how do you make sure that all of these guys, the designer guys, are aligned between each other? How do you make sure that one is designing the drop-down box this way and another one is not designing it that way? Of course, talking about the case when there is no design system in place or something like that, because this still happens pretty often in companies. And the consistency problems that I just mentioned, because for example, if we are talking about the organizations, the enterprise organizations for which I'm working, yeah, consistency is kind of like always the problem there. If there are like 3 big products or even 2 big products or one product that has a lot of features inside, so how do you make sure that all of these guys, they do not go and start designing something that they hate? I just really don't like that one, I'm just gonna correct it a little bit so it looks a little bit better, and then it just, the 2 features or 2 products really go apart. And the last one is, it's UX being really involved into the day-to-day work, so they're really like becoming reactive and working on the thing that development team is working. And they're not really paying attention to, hey, let's just brainstorm what's going to be the future, right? So usually like they're just like working in this moment for this feature, and there is no much innovation or investigation.
You have the no UX team as such. Now I remember the previous one, the internal agency one, we talked about we had a UX backlog and then we had 4 other backlogs for all the developers. It seems to me now all you have are the 4 backlogs and you don't have that second backlog here.
Correct.
The UX,
Correct. So there is no UX backlog. Everything is just like UX team is within the development team. So that's like the cross-functional model when the UX team is really divided between all of your functionalities within the company.
Just
is a matter of interest. And if, for example, UX designers are overloaded and you want to hire new UX designers, how do these models react to that?
Great question. As this is something that I'm going to address in my next slides. This is something that's happening to us, and I'm going to probably talk about that by my experience as well. So it's going to be in a couple of minutes.
Okay, so in other words, adding new people right in the middle of the project. Is that the
I think adding more people on the UX team, you mean? Is that what you mean? Yeah, like when the UX team growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah, for sure. Good one. All right, so all of this looks great. And again, you know, the question is kind of like then raising. So which one should my company pick? Which one, me as a UX manager or as a team lead, or maybe, you know, I'm just planning to raise my UX team, which one of these models should I pick? And the answer that that's kind of like tricky, it depends, right? And it depends exactly, it kind of like relates to your question a lot. So first model that was working for us, XebiaLabs, in the beginning very well. This is usually the case when indeed there are much less designers than developers. For example, when there is a ratio like one designer to, I don't know, 15 developers, 20 developers, right? Because you cannot put a UXer in every of your development teams. It just simply doesn't scale. Another one, this model works better when the development teams are a little bit more autonomous, which means, hey, they can go and let's say they can figure out things themselves a little bit faster or better. Maybe they're a bit more approachable, so they will go and ask you, hey, what should we do, etc. Because there are different people, right? Some of them are really like, hey, let's fix it, and the other one will be like, yeah, we need help. And yeah, this one is the model when if you would like your UX team to help you with maybe with the future steps, with the future features, with some research, you don't want to place your UXers into the development teams, because then they're kind of just going to be absorbed by developers, and like they're going to be working with them on the features that they're developing right now. So there is going to be less focus on the research and on the future. And this one works better when you have enough designers to place in each of the team, or when, for example, you are growing out of this one. This is somewhere that my company is, I think we are somewhere in between right now, in the middle, so we are outgrowing this one a little bit, so we have resources to put on each of the development teams to help them figure out things as they go. This one is also better when, as I said, developers need more help, or maybe your product is super visual, like, you know, you really need a lot of interaction. Maybe your product owner really wants to make the feature super delightful. We have a fancy word right now, like super nicely behaving, etc. So when there is a lot of user experience or designing needed. And this approach works better if you would like to really bring your development up to speed. This is the one of the things that we also met in our company, that if we would like really to speed up the development so they don't have to wait for us until that thing reaches our backlog and it's going to be prioritized, then this model is better. How exactly did we do this at XebiaLabs? Just find one final detail that's probably going to be really interesting for you guys, I hope. So we have this guy. We actually went for the agency, the internal UX agency model, and we introduced the Spock designer. What does that mean? That means that we are still like a team that sits, let's say, in the middle between everybody. So at that time we had 4, and right now, and been moving to 6 development teams, and we had 4 designers on the team. What we've done, we assigned to every designer, and we made sure that developers clearly know that. We said, hey, you're going to be the Spock, which is single point of contact designer person for this team. So if they have a problem, if they need some help, they can go to us, and you know, they can ask the question. We can quickly help them with some little things. You know, so we are kind of still sitting within our team in the middle, but we are still can help them with some of the things that can really block them. This also helped us a lot with the problem that we found out whenever we are sitting in the middle of the room as a team, and the developers are working on features. If there is a question that they're not sure about. They kind of like, they really didn't want to go to us and start figuring out, hey, who is working on this feature? Like, I don't know really who to approach, what should I ask, etc. We figured out that it worked way better if they knew, hey, if I have a problem for my product, I'm going to person A. If I have a problem for another product, I go to person B. So, and from time to time, what we've done, we also had these feature teams popping up whenever they would be working on maybe some newer vision, or some they would be doing some experiment or something like that. We would just simply outsource one designer there, so he would sit with them more. So we've been like balancing between the internal agency and between the cross-functional team. So that helped us to be present whenever we've been needed for the development. How does this look like? What anybody recognize?
One question.
Yeah.
So every group in that slide before has a SPOC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that a SPOC maybe doesn't necessarily have to be a programmer. You know, a SPOC can be someone who doesn't necessarily know how to code, but has familiarity with at least the macro. So in other words, it's important in terms of the talents you have, whether you really need to find a programmer and pay a programmer. Maybe a SPOC can be sort of a little less qualified along those lines, but still do a very good job in the sort of liaison function.
Yeah. In our case, this POC was a designer, so somebody who would help development solve the design questions on the go, because we've been sitting kind of in isolation from them. Well, in isolation, just 3 meters away. But still, we were not present there, so we've been trying to solve this problem when they didn't know who to approach, and it felt like still standing up and going somewhere else was like a little bit of a challenge. So we wanted to help them, hey, I'm your person if you have a problem. And we applied a couple of other tricks that I'm gonna talk in the other part there.
Can't we just have like a random person as a SPOC? For example, like we just take a person and design some feature for a product and just tell everything to that person, like all the details, so that in case that if the development team needs some help, they can just ask that person, but it is not necessary for the person to be a designer.
Well, for example, I'll give you an example. So the question was, does that SPOC person needs to be a designer, or we can just tell him everything so he can answer those questions? I'll give you an example from my life. It wasn't possible for us because the question sometimes, hey, the icon is missing. Where do I find that? Hey, which font do I use? Which colors? Hey, this doesn't look consistent. Or hey, this drop-down behaves differently. We need to fix the wireframes or the prototypes. These kind of situations I'm talking about. Or for example, when one scenario wasn't covered, like there is a whole feature design, and like there is a scenario that we didn't thought of, or validation error, right? And it has to be a designer who will design this experience. So he will make sure that he will go to that person, and that person will help him, because the person also kind of carries the knowledge of the product.
Isn't like the design overall in general is designed by the whole team? So maybe like the designer that was responsible for one development team, he still might not know about some kind of stuff, right?
Let me see if I got it correct. All designers should know what the others are working on,
yeah,
right?
For example, you have one design team in the middle, right? So does that mean that you all have to work on one product in general?
No, that wasn't our case, for example. So we had 3 different products, like totally different. They've been doing totally different things, and the 3 different products would have different features in them. So for example, one designer, he could know what the other one was, he knew what the other one was working, but he haven't necessarily was like carrying these details about why certain behavior was built in that way. So I'm talking about these big corporations, maybe as my company example, where you really have these different features, and like it's pretty big. So it's not like one website, let's say we are talking about, but it's probably like a 3 maybe products on one platform or something, as an example. All right, I think that's a good on time. So let's quickly move to so that was like the theory part. Let's go to the practice right now, yeah? Let's see how we did that. Yeah, there's a question.
Nadia, don't you think documentation would help more?
Documentation for what?
For the design specification, because every feature team has a specific design goal, a specific development goal, and if you document all your goals in a certain place and keep everybody informed in a proper uniform repository or documentation,
Yeah, that's a good question. My answer would be that we are maybe over agile. We don't do much like documentation about what are we doing. Like we don't document every single step. And to be honest, I find communication be way better over documentation. I would rather go and show developers my designs and would explain why did I did certain thing that would make them read like a 30-page document. Who works with the documentation here? Who transfers the requirements with the documentation? Who uses communication more? All right. Yeah, I think that's the question of maybe like the popularity of being agile. When the things change so often that you spend too much time on documenting them instead of just doing your job. Yeah, maybe it also relates to the speed of the company.
But in case, let's say, you communicate something to the developer, and then you go to that amount later, the contract needs to be.
I mean, no. I mean, of course, like the features being documented, right? Like when there is a feature or product documentation. But I mean more. Maybe I misunderstood. But what I understood from the question before is like the documentation about the decisions, right? Or like when you're making a design and you immediately documenting it,
like a change log.
Yeah, like a change doc. We don't do that at XebiaLabs. We more like prefer, hey, if there is a change, maybe we first like, I will also be talking about that. We building the assumption, right? We're having an assumption, we're building a wireframe, we're validating that, and and then validating it probably once again, and then we are documenting it at the end when it's ready. So we don't like spend time on over documenting things. Let me quickly move on because I'm going to cover that part a little bit. What I would like to say, like how do I see user experience teams in the companies? And this is something that I was trying to explain in my organization when I just joined. User experience teams or user experience in general is kind of like an icebreaker. And I'm talking about the ships here. What do? They go in these areas like maybe when like nobody was for a long time at this place, right? It's always usually covered with the ice. What do? They go, they break the ice and kind of like make a path for everybody behind them to make sure that it's clean, clear, safe, that you can go, right? This is how I see the user experience. Whenever we have an idea, whenever there is an assumption, you have to take this assumption, you have to take it out there, validate it, so we don't waste the development effort on building the assumption, because this can be kind of costly. You guys, developers, are really expensive, so we cannot spend this much cost for nothing. But every icebreaker has a crew, right? But I'm also liking to say that if the ship is stuck, it needs some help. And what I meant by that, because my company is also so technical, and actually in any case, but even if you would be designing an experience for a mobile platform for Albertine, for example, I think that it's always nice to not leave like, hey, so we are UXers, we're gonna go investigate and we're gonna leave everybody behind. And like we're gonna tell you later what we find out. No, we try to grab PM, product manager, grab product owner, grab a couple of developers, and take them on this journey with us. So we are not traveling alone and breaking that ice, but we are trying to do that together, because then you don't need to like do this communication, like say what you've learned. Maybe you missed a couple of things. Maybe you need to document it again, and some things usually get just keep there. This is how we do the software release at XebiaLabs, and this is something that I guess kind of common. If you're gonna look at the release dates, let's say, right, when you're releasing your software, there are a couple of versions here. So usually we start with some UX, like I just said. So what we do, the product manager or CPO, with Chief Product Officer, comes with this awesome idea that we probably we can assume that, okay, people will like that, they will use this will solve all of their problems and everything will be great. What we are doing first, we are trying to test these assumptions by building some really quick wireframes. Maybe a lot of the designers who are here, they're doing the same. And then we are going and testing those assumptions with the same product owners, with people outside, with internal people. And somewhere in between, probably I should maybe draw it a little bit here, we start involving also the development teams, because they have to start hearing what people say whenever it goes to a little bit more concrete stuff. And they also have to start planning the backend for that, right? The technology, the language, the changes that maybe they would need to do to the existing platform, and maybe, hey, maybe the favorite phase, yeah, maybe that's not even possible to do, whatever we are wanting to do. So it's really important to have this communication lab there. At the same time, as the UX work goes down for version 1, and the development work kind of grows here, what we do is we put some effort from the UX team already on the second version, so we kind of like, whoop, one step ahead. So some of us are finishing here, like maybe some visual designs, interactions, more. And here we have already some of this user experience, user researchers capacity to start with a new feature. So we kind of like start looking a little bit into the future. And it goes on and on, right? Some people would actually, when I show this to some people, they're saying, hey, this looks like waterfall. Like, you know, it's kind of like jumping and, you know, like, yeah, evolving only after certain time. No, it's pretty, for us it looks pretty agile, so there are some changes, of course, they're happening. There is some corrections that needed to be done for the technical side. And another thing that we are paying attention a lot is the Lean UX principles. Anybody knows what's that about, Lean UX? All right, so Lean UX is, just for those maybe who haven't heard, it's kind of like a methodology of making business and product development work together. So what it means, they take the business idea, they build it in some kind of a prototype, and not usually not involving code. So the costs are really low. They're building it in Vision, in some kind of a wireframing, or just on the paper, or maybe quick HTML, CSS. I don't know, whatever works for each organization. And they would go and test it and measure the outcomes. Then they learn, they re-implement some stuff, they do the corrections, and it goes on. And then, well, it goes usually like maybe twice, the loop closes twice, and then we actually go to the actual code building. So it's called Lean UX because, yeah, it's really lean, there is no waste there. This is, by the way, the methodology that was created by Google Ventures.
Well, because, you know, a lot of companies like to use A/B testing to test for the UX, and it would seem to me, correct me if I'm wrong, this does not incorporate that, because you're trying one at a time rather than two. So you don't have two, you only have one at a time, right?
Remember, you have a couple of teams, right? A couple of development teams, so they're all trying their own things, right?
Okay.
If you have that capacity to assign a designer for each of the team, you can do this at the same time in parallel, like a couple of features. You know, for example, in my company, we do a couple of features for 3 products, so it's kind of like a looping process. And a couple of things that I would like to highlight about the Lean UX. By the way, there is a lot of literature on that one, and especially for UXers, it's really nice if you would like to implement this like faster feedbacks and actually like maybe make your management believe in user testing. I really suggest to Google Lean UX. There are a couple of cool books. Maybe I'll also leave the links in the meetup. So what it helps, this methodology really helps to move from this like uncertainty that you have in the beginning of the product development or feature building, and it helps you really to move to the clarity, because you will test the assumption and you will know, hey, like our users didn't really understand what that was about. They didn't understand the title, for example. They didn't understand how the page worked. Maybe they said that, hey, we don't really need this feature because we have something similar. That happened to us as well. And whenever your product manager was really like, hey, this is going to be awesome, you know, and then you kind of like learn fast and fail fast, right? At least you don't waste time and money. Another thing that we used to have a lot, and we actually have sometimes that, and maybe it's okay, but these long discussions in the room with a lot of different people, like, hey, no, this is gonna work better, no, this is not gonna work, etc. So, you know, there is a lot of You probably know what I'm talking about, right? So just pick a solution, build it in prototype, in quick code, and test it, and you will see was it the right one or not. Removing waste, this is something that I mentioned about, and the shared understanding, because you are, of course, we are, as I said, we are trying to involve the development already in this first user research part, so they know, they hear this from the people directly themselves, instead of, because sometimes what I also had experienced in the past, that if I would tell that, hey, we had this feedback, people probably would not believe, or they think that I'm making things better or worse because that was my personal preference. Oops. And yeah, so it's just better if they will hear it themselves. Okay, couple of more things. Whenever icebreaker passes, there are some icebergs left there on its path, right? And those icebergs are the things that are still there, even if we have this loop, you know, we are testing, we are involving everybody early enough. There is still some problems that we faced when trying to set up this good collaboration between the development and the UX departments at my company. So what are those? First one is that still UX can be absent in the development day-to-day work. So you can still sometimes miss, hey, what exactly are you working on? So which of these, which of these components are you developing? How is it actually going? Do you need my input? That problem that we tried to solve was a spot designer. So what we do is that we send this spot designer, or maybe you have this dedicated UX person in your development team. What we do, that's a rule for us to attend the stand-ups of the development team. Whenever there is user experience work involved, we always send there the designer. And there are no exceptions. And actually, once in my experience, there was a story when one of my teammates, she went to the to the stand-up, and she was like, at some point she was coming back to me, hey Nadia, I really don't see the need, why am I there? You know, they're talking their technical things, like I don't understand anything, like why do I need to go to the stand-ups every day? And what I did the next day, I just joined with her, and what I kind of seen that she was physically there, but mentally not. And when I was actually standing there, so when the development team was discussing some of the features that really touched the user interaction, this how the things should behave, she was just standing there kind of like maybe on her phone or so she wasn't there, where her goal was to bring these problems back to the team, and we would have to find a solution for that. Whenever, this is the message that I'm trying to say, if you're attending a development stand-up, make sure that you're interested, that you're mentally present, and to make sure that the stand-up doesn't go over the time, or doesn't deviate from the discussions, because what I often see as well, that people would start discussing, I don't know, vacation during the stand-up, and it's not 15 minutes, but it's like 45 at the end. Nobody will like to attend that, of course, because it's waste of time. Make sure that the Scrum Master is time boxing that. Another thing that really helped us, it's a couple of advices how to solve this decisions that still being done without the design. So design decisions being done with the design team. What we've done, we added this UX acquired or UX design acquired or UX clarify, whatever you want to call it, your column on the backlog. So everybody is familiar with the with Jira. Maybe somebody uses the Kanban board. I still like to do, doing, done, or this kind of to do, in progress, testing, done. So whenever a team struggles with some problem that has to be answered by the designer, they put this ticket here. So not in to do, not in progress, because it's not in progress, they're stuck. You put it there, and immediately on the next stand-up, the spot designer spots this. Aha, there is something for us to do. And we're quickly addressing that issue if that's small. If no, we are discussing this further, so this really helps us to react. And of course, we are trying to set up the friendly communication, the friendly collaboration with the Scrum Master at least, because that's your, that has to be your captain of the team. So we make sure that he knows if there is a problem, he has to go to the spot designer. Like, hey, this is where the guy is sitting or the girl, like if something happens, just go over there. So that really helped us. And we actually received this feedback from the development, right? So I'm not making it up again. The third problem out of the 4 that I want to address is usually if there is like some accident happened, some collaboration didn't work, was some bad experience, like usually we do not talk about that between UX and dev. So what we started doing, we started attending the development team's retrospective, or the other way around, they started attending our UX retrospectives. Again, no exceptions. Sometimes it's like, yeah, it's for 1 hour, they're talking about like I don't know what. For us, it really helped to understand what are they struggling with and share some of our struggles. And you're talking about your work together. So if there is any problem to solve there, we would address this at the retrospective, where is the product owner, usually not always, and we would talk about that openly and say, hey, next time if you have this problem, we're going to solve this way. And final point, again, talking about this house in the beginning and house at the end, where windows are missing, flowers are not there. We made it as a rule, whenever you design a feature, there is a pre-planning session, or there is a refinement session with the UXers and developers. So you explain why did you do something, and you talk about that. If they have, and usually, like, I love these sessions because the developers usually would say, but what will happen if that? Or did you think about this case? And for us, for example, when we indeed developing for developers, they come up with really good ideas. So we receive a lot of nice questions from there, and they make our work way higher quality, to be honest. And also we implemented these 2 rules. So user experience is the part of definition of done. The people who are working in Scrum know that this is the rule. There is a set of rules that before a developer will drag the ticket to done, there is a set of rules that it has to apply to. And of course Q&A is a part of that as well, quality assurance. This means like, hey, the task was seen by a designer and was kind of like approved, or this matches the design. And we have a pretty cool quality assurance guys in our company. And what we are doing sometimes, we are doing the testing with them. And we are even right now working on setting up the automation tests for the interfaces. So there is some kind of a tool, maybe I'll have to make a separate talk out of that, that puts the design over the end result, and kind of like compares it and shows, hey, you used the wrong color here, the pixels are way off here, which really helps to bring, hey, this feature is not finished, like back to in progress. All right, so I'm pretty much done. Couple of final things. Often when I give these presentations, people are saying that, hey, what if, like, all this looks good, perfect, like people attending rituals, they communicate, etc. But what if I cannot convince my designer or my developer to attend the rituals of each other, right? To attend the stand-ups. Like sometimes it just doesn't work. For example, when this girl was there from my team, and it like she really wasn't interested. In this case, like I'm kind of like just saying, hey, does your developer see your designer like that? And does your designer, see your developer like that guy? If this situation that you have in the company, then there is a problem. If they don't want to have shared understanding, when they are not interested in each other's work, maybe you have to work first on that and make sure that they're understanding how important it is to work together, to understand what each others are doing, and just to try to put some effort into that and see what's working, what's not. Another advice for that, this is also something that we faced when people were saying, hey, I just don't want to be there because it's just dragging for hours. Make sure that you are having a fixed time for these rituals, for these stand-ups, retrospectives, refinement sessions. Make sure that they're time boxed. And as soon as there is discussion going off the road, as we discussed, just stop it and say, hey guys, we need to focus.
Or how about just get rid of the chairs and make them stand up during the meeting? It'll be pretty short.
Yeah, as well. Or sometimes, like we actually had some joke today. You can just close the doors in the room, and everybody at some point will just being hot and in one leaf. These things, you know, or have this winky thingy. There is tons of ways. Just make sure that it doesn't go off the leaf, right? And yeah, only relevant discussions as we discussed. You know, you can chat about the weather and vacation after, when not like everybody will be there. You know. As a result, what we achieved in XebiaLabs, we have UX incorporated into the development cycle. Of course, there are some problems here and there, but it's way better than it was, way better than we started from. The design problems and, you know, things that are missing, and just some clarifications are addressed really fast, because we know where to address the problems, and then team is quite reactive, so we try to not make anybody wait. Everybody is on the same page, because we are in the same meetings, you know, we're aligned to the same goal, to the same timeline, so this really helps us to be in the same direction. Products consistency, because you know, we are all still, even if we are working with the different products, different features, we are still aligning between each other, and we are still exchanging the information. And of course, the collaboration is way better than it was. As I said, there is still way to go. We're still working on that, but we really had this feedback from the retrospective that we've been attending, that hey, they really feel our presence. Right now, I have a clear overview what each of my development teams are doing. I can come by at any time and say, hey, how is that feature going? And they will share. So we're really, really aligned, which really helps us on the day-to-day work. And last but not least, we have a lot of tools that helps us as designers, and that helps us as, to talk to the developers as well. So yeah, actually the slides are a bit more oriented for the designers, but let me quickly go through each of them. So there is the design systems. It's actually more a methodology. I don't know, anybody heard about atomic design from Brad Worst? Yeah. So this is a methodology of building up your components for your product from the smallest elements, like icons, fonts, you know, little maybe elements that being called atoms, into the molecules, which are maybe like a drop-down component or a search component or a button, into organisms that may be like a navigation, or like left, you know, like maybe some filters, you know, you have on the left, etc. Into the templates that maybe are tables, you know, they're already bigger. Yeah, into some other bigger components, and at the end you have your page as your screen. We started implementing this in Sketch, actually, so we're building this graphically. And what we're using then, where is that thingy? Zeppelin. We're using this for the handoff. I hate this word, by the way, but to explain or to showcase the specifications of the design to developers, we use Zeppelin. There are a lot of other features like Inspect and InVision and tons of others that show, hey, amount of pixels, colors, icons you can download. You can leave comments, like, for example, hey, this is not consistent with what I've seen before, or whatever. Similar thing is Avocode. We use Framer for prototyping. We actually use Sketch as well for prototyping. Framer is actually a pretty cool product. I've seen just a demo of Framer X last week. This is, yeah, maybe more interesting for designers though than for developers. And we're also using the design style versioning. That helps us, hey, if we lost something, it's easily, we can easily revert back to that. So it's not only code management control, but also design files versioning we are using. Pretty cool tools. So just to sum this whole up, I was talking for quite a lot. So as I showcase from my personal experience, I really see as much you are communicating, as much you are collaborating, the better the result gets at the end. You really get there faster, and your end result is much better than you would be if you would be just working on the islands. The collaboration between the user experience teams and the development is like a baseline of the success. And of course you need to have there the PO as well. And like, you know, this cross-functional communication is just like, it's a key to a properly specified feature, to properly designed, because you're working all together, you don't need to wait for anybody, it just works great. UX is an icebreaker. Don't forget to go out there and investigate to make it safer for the rest of the company. Lean UX, there are a lot of cool stuff. I just showed you 4 or 5, but there is a lot of like this rules that apply to Lean UX. I really encourage everybody to go investigate that if somebody is working with user experience and doesn't know about that. And yeah, don't forget to involve your UX teams into the development rituals. Don't forget to involve your development teams in your UX rituals. It just really helps at the end. That's it. Thank you so much. Any questions before? I know that we have probably pizza arriving or arrived. Is here, right? Any questions? Anybody had similar experiences?
How do you test a prototype?
How do we test a prototype? That's the question. So we start from the something lower fidelity, like a wireframe, which is pretty same prototype, but for example not clickable. We have a pretty wide customer base. Some of them are in US, some of them are in other countries. More often we do this over the phone. We just send them the link to the prototype that they can walk around, or we just walk them through if that's on the earlier stage, like show, hey, we've been trying to solve the problem A, and this is the solution that we came up. Try to play around, try to find your way, or we prepare the specific user scenario that they have to go through, the specific user task that they have to complete, and then, hey, let us know what you think. Does it work? Does this make sense, etc. And in between, you see that he is struggling with this component, that the other person is struggling with that, or they cannot really understand what the hell the page is doing, in that way.
Nice.
Yeah?
Very nice presentation, congratulations. In your company, who often make those acceptance tests?
Company who often makes acceptance tests.
In your company, who make those acceptance tests?
Well,
To test your feature?
we have two quality assurance guys, or hiring the third one. It's also, I think, that's another team that always, at least in our company, it's being shared, that needs way more attention. So they have their product that they would go test, they would involve us, and they would just different scenarios, set up some automatic tests, do some manual testing, send the things to us, because what we often see that developers simply do not come back, hey, we designed this, and they would always, hey, did you see this? Does it look correct to you? Do you want to test with me? Etc. So we have a specific quality assurance people who are doing that. Yeah. Just one last, and then you guys can find me around. So pizzas is, yeah.
After mixing the two models of UX team and LinkedIn, this means now all company or team, we have one backlog or we have different backlogs, one for UX and developers, and when we put the ticket in the phone, you will only check this.
Yeah. In our case, it's still a separate backlog, so it's like we have 7 development teams, so they have each one of them. They have their own backlog for the development tasks, like writing the actual code. And we, as a UXers, we have our own backlog still that we are linking with that backlog, because it kind of like it acquires everything from the other developers. But it's something more applicable for the agency model than for the second one, because if there is a second, the cross-functional model, when UXer is on the team, then you probably have your UX tasks incorporated into the development backlog as well. So it's just how many development teams backlog, how many development teams you have, that many backlogs you have in the company. So no UX separate backlog. That's the big difference between the two.
And after mixing the two models, still you are applying for the backlogs as agency?
Yeah, for now, yes. We are thinking of switching because we are growing, but it's an experimentation. But for now, yeah, we have our separate still. I'm here to answer the questions. I would like to hear some feedback on the talk, on how interesting, was that useful, no, yes. Any feedback is welcome, and yeah, come find me to talk. And find me on the social media. Thanks so much.
Nice, thank you. Yes, so there's like literally one thing separating you from beers and pizza, and that is my little raffle. I stomped all your names already on this PC. And I'm very sweaty because I'm too hot.
Oh, I probably should give you the microphone.
Okay, it's fine. I'll just shout to school. Okay. So whilst you were doing it, I went through. I went through all of the names. Does everybody have a name badge? If you don't have a name badge, you're not in my raffle.